הלו, שומעים אותי? בוקר טוב לכולם. ניסיתי היום איזו מדיטציה מיוחדת שאחד הולנדי הביא לי. נדע איך הוא קרא למדיטציה הזאת. מדיטציה של שעתיים. עשיתי את זה בדיוק של 3 פעמים. כן, הגרף ירד, הגרף באמת השתגע. זה דקס בגרף של דקה. דקה, בוא נראה עוד משהו מעניין. שנייה. כן, הגרף ירד, הגרף באמת השתגע. כן, רק לבדוק פשוט שזה עובד. הנה זה המשיך לרדת. אתה מצליח להבין משהו? עוד רגע אני אסביר על... ככה נראה הגרף של הדקס, ככה נראה. כל שעה זה נר. אתה רואה את הנר פה? אמיר? אם אמיר עדיין פה. דקה, רציתי להראות עוד משהו. מישהו עם פרקינסון. זה אינדיקטור, זה ממוצע של ה-20 נרות האחרונים. וזה סטייה של 2. לא יודע איך הם מחשבים את זה בדיוק. יעני, הקווים האלה זה קווים שהולכים לפי הרמות מחיר. בדרך כלל הוא שואף להגיע לאמצע, לפי האינדיקטור הזה. יעני, אם זה מתחת לקו זה אומר שזה יורד, אם זה מעל הקו זה אומר שזה הולך לעלות. ושוב, כל גרף זה שונה. בגרף 4 שעות לדוגמה זה מתחת ממש. גרף יומי זה גם מתחת. גרף חודשי זה מעל. אולי גם גרף שבועי זה מעל. כן, גם גרף שבועי זה מעל עדיין. בדקס. הבנתם משהו? דקה, אני רוצה לבדוק. איזה משהו חדש של בוריס ג'ונסון, אם הוא אמר משהו חדש. בוריס ג'ונסון אמר פעם האחרונה. האחרון היה לפני 17 שעות של שר האוצר הבריטי. טוב, בוא נראה את זה.
And all too often the windows get smashed. I've raised this issue with my local chief constable, Cleveland's acting police and crime commissioner, and the Secretary of State for the Home Office, and now the leader of the House. So can we have a debate in government time on how we can best tackle this recent surge in car crime? Does he agree with me that the police and the courts should consider using all mechanisms at their disposal to root out the yobs that are terrorising my communities?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise this issue and to encourage the police to use all the powers that they have to root out car crime, which is a particularly unpleasant form of crimes, and it must be very difficult for my honourable friend's constituents who are suffering in this way. The government is recruiting 20,000 extra police officers, and several thousand have already been recruited, and that will ensure a bigger police presence for communities across the country, including in Cleveland. My honourable friend will be able to raise these questions further with the Home Secretary. But in this House, there are so many ways of raising issues that ups the political pressure. German debates, back-based business debates, urgent questions.
זה ג'ייקוב שרואים עכשיו. אני אף פעם זוכר את השם, יש לו שם ארוך, רייס מייק ג'ייקוב. דקה. נכתוב את זה, כי זה שם באמת...
Many thanks, Mr. Speaker. National Mentoring Day is the 27th of October, and the mentoring all parts of Parliament
Jacob Rees-Mogg
with the Diana Award are absolutely delighted to have over 100 MPs from
זה
across
השם
the
שלו.
Chamber signed up to mentor a young person next week. I had hoped, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister may sign
הוא היה אחד מהאנשים שקידמו לעזוב את האיחוד האירופי באנגליה, בבריטניה.
But may we have an important statement
הוא ובוריס ג'ונסון ונייג'ל פראג'. ויש עוד איזה אחד נראה לי, אבל הם בעיקר.
Leader. Mr. Speaker, may I congratulate the Honourable Lady for what she is doing in terms of mentoring. It is a way of giving young people a real chance to get ahead in their lives and make their mark. And I'm delighted to hear that 100 MPs are supporting her initiative. I will ensure that a message goes after this meeting to another that the Prime Minister is aware of her request. I can't promise what the answer will be, but I would really thank her for what she's doing. It is so important and such an important initiative.
We go to Harrow Airways with permission to land. Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Ground Control. Mr. Speaker, Harrow Council is currently considering 3 very controversial planning applications for building high-density multi-storey flats on Stanmore, Cannons Park and Rayners Lane station car parks. These have received thousands of objections from residents all over Harrow, concerned with the loss of car parking and also the imposition of these high-rise developments. Harrow Council Planning Committee is likely to consider the Cannons Park station application in December, the Stanmore Park station in January, but for some strange reason, Rayners Lane is going to be delayed till June. Stanmore and Cannons Park are both in Conservative-held wards, and the Labour-run council has decided to postpone the Rayners Lane application till after the mayoral elections next year. So could we have a debate in government time on political interference in the planning process which reeks of corruption?
Leader, I think that's a little bit too long a question.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend raises a point that is deeply concerning and raises a very serious charge. Politically motivated interference in matters such as planning
רק 480p יש להם פה, אבל לא צריך יותר. בשביל לשמוע את ג'ייקוב מדבר.
Once the internal process has been exhausted, it may be possible to involve the local government ombudsman. Local authorities have to abide by a code of conduct and to make
לא החלטתי מה לעשות על יורו דולר, אבל היורו דולר כנראה בדרך ל-1.17.
is thoroughly improper.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, Mr. Latimer, has for nearly 2 decades campaigned to halt the flow of illegal sewage dumping onto Seaburn Beach behind his home. A ruling 8 years ago stated that the levels of sewage breached legal guidelines.
$1,907 זה הזהב, 24.60 זה הכסף טהור.
This government, the Environment Agency, are ignoring him, the Whitburn Neighbourhood Forum, and my place to try and sort this out. Why is this, and when can we have an urgent debate on this matter?
אז עושים ככה, ואז אני אומר, אני מסכים להפסיד אחוז בערך. אני רוצה להרוויח עד 25. אז זה אומר, בוא נראה, או להרוויח על $34, או להפסיד. יש לזכור שמדובר באתגר שהוא דמו, אז ככה שזה לא על כסף אמיתי, אבל זה אימון. אני רוצה, בוא נראה. נזיז לכאן. דקה, איפה נסתק 100? שנייה, אני עדיין לא רואה צ'אט. הם כתבו משהו.
the standards of conduct that we have in this chamber, because the language we use impact people beyond us. Perhaps you'll bring the honourable lady for asking on the line here and apologise, not just to us, but perhaps to my mum as well, who's had to abhor that today.
Leave the house.
לא כתבתם.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right to say this, and can I say...
שומעים אותי טוב, יותר טוב מ... איך קוראים לו? מה הוא מהפרלמנט? שהוא לא ידבר יותר גבוה ממני.
By being a member of Parliament. It is the highest honour that one can have and the greatest service that one can do. And I'm sure that his mother was aware of that before I said it, but I hope that he will ensure that she does know that this is a high position that he holds and one of honourability. The Chairman of Ways and Means dealt with the issue yesterday in the way you would expect from the Chair, and dealt with it extremely clearly. But I would remind people of asking May 21-21. Good temper and moderation are the characteristics of parliamentary language. Inevitably, discussing heated political matters, people state their case forcefully, but they must do so politely.
טוב, דקה, אני רוצה לבדוק ברדיט אם יש דברים חדשים. לא, בטח אין דברים חדשים ברדיט, אבל... גם לראות סתם אם זה בסדר, גם אם הם לא רק של... גם אם לא קשורים רק אליי.
Only this week, leaked government plans have shown their intentions to expand the congestion charge to north and south circulars and impose above inflation fare rises. So instead of levelling unfounded and unfair criticism at the Mayor of London that has not been levelled at private firms that the government has bailed out during the pandemic, can we have a debate in government time on these leaked eye-watering proposals that are likely to impact over 4 million...
נביא אבל את הלינק לרדת בכל מקרה, ככה שאם יש לכם מים שאתם עושים, אז תוכלו לשלוח לפה את המים. למי שאין עדיין את הלינק.
Conservative government, on the other hand, is the largest road building programme in decades and a real commitment to making motoring easier and helping people drive in the way that they wish to do. The fact that Transport for London has run out of money is because it was running out of money.
יש שאלה אבל איך קוראים לזה? במטבעות? משהו?
badly managed by an incompetent man.
Heading to North Devon with Lane Saxby. Lane Saxby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst it is important that our workplace is COVID secure and we lead by example,
בקיצור, למישהו יש איזה שאלה על מטבעות, חוזים, משהו? מטבעות או חוזים?
and when we eventually emerge from this pandemic.
Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend because she gives me the opportunity to pay tribute to the House authority. It's obviously to you, Mr. Speaker.
יש שאלה למישהו, מטבעות או חוזים?
Between you have done amazing work to ensure that the House's proceedings are carried on in a COVID-19.
דקה, אני בינתיים אביא עוד...
Staff of the House and of members are kept safe in the House of Commons, whilst we have been following Public Health England's guidelines. My honourable friend is absolutely right to say that we provide an essential service and we must be here.
בוא נתקע על המים שיש לו כאן.
Must be lifted as soon as they can be. They are all temporary. I look forward to this chamber being full and bustling once again, but that will have to come when it is safe to do so. I look forward to not having to wear a face mask, but again, that must be done when it is safe to do so. And we must lead by example to the country at large, both in our dutifulness and in our adherence to the rules.
Alex Davis. Mr. Speaker, this Sunday our clocks will go back 1 hour as part of daylight savings time. According to a recent government report, though, 59% of the British population would rather remain on summer time, and I think we can all agree that the last thing our country needs is yet another hour of 2020. So with that in mind, will the Leader of the House agree to a debate on government time to discuss the practice of moving clocks so we can follow the EU in scrapping this outdated and unnecessary practice?
Mr. Speaker, until the Honourable Lady said follow the EU, I might even have been tempted, but I'm afraid I always enjoy the extra hour in bed. It's such a luxury.
אנשים שופים חלב לפני קורנפלקס.
Going back to Greenwich Mean Time has that extra hour of sleep, but more importantly, people in Scotland particularly would find very, very late mornings if we didn't change the clocks. And this was debated in 2010 and 2011. It has been considered recently. When it was last tried, it was then unwound, both in the UK and in Portugal. So I'm not sure the appetite for change, and certainly not the appetite to follow the EU, is all that great.
יש למישהו שאלות על מטבעות? או חוזים? למה לקנות חוזים ולא קורסים?
So with international travel more difficult, can we have a debate on how best to support our domestic tourism sector and all the excellent hospitality businesses that are part of it?
I am indeed familiar with Betty's because when I went to speak for my honourable friend, I was provided with a goodie bag at the end of the evening of delicious provisions. And I also note that Harrogate's been declared the best place in the country to work, and I'm sure that's because it has such a fantastic member of parliament, and the broadband is merely incidental. But the government is trying to do what it can to help tourists.
כיתה ג'
economic package has given one-off grants for eligible hospitality and leisure businesses. VAT has been cut from 20% to 5% until the tourism is obviously seasonal, and therefore the situation is being watched closely to ensure that the right policies may continue to be implemented. But my honourable friend may want to raise further questions with the Chancellor. We want to call this fairly shortly after this.
Thank you much, Mr. Speaker. Last month, the leader
זה
of the
קיבל
Conservative
466 כאילו אפוץ, למה?
in the country, stating, I just want to make sure no one falls through the cracks. Well, Mr. Speaker, last night he failed to vote for free school meals. Indeed, his 5 Scottish colleagues voted against. So can we have a debate in government time about how many children in England will fall through the cracks as a result of his government's refusal to extend free school meals?
למה מה הוא אמר שם? ביידן. רגע, היום יש עוד איזה נאום של ביידן מתישהו וטראמפ. ואני דיבייט. בוא נבדוק מתי זה. אני זוכר שדווקא תזמנו אפילו את איך קוראים לזה.
provide £180 million for discretionary housing payments to councils, plus a £63 million local welfare assistance fund so councils can help those in financial difficulty, and £16 million for food charities. The government takes this issue really seriously and has made great steps. People who are finding life difficult with the consequences of the coronavirus. I think we must sometimes understand in this house that we seek the same ends but by different means. There is nobody in this house.
כן, לפני 4 שעות זה שודר.
But there are different ways of doing it. We think it is best done through the
6 בבוקר.
of the welfare system and by the additional measures that the government has taken. That is an honest disagreement, but it is not a lack of concern.
Martin Vickers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday I visited the Grimsby Seafood Village, which, despite its name, is in my Cleethorpes constituency. And there I met with businesses who have established themselves or indeed expanded during the COVID pandemic. We need these sort of businesses to develop and to establish themselves in order to ensure the economy recovers after we get through the present crisis. We have a debate to discuss how we may support new businesses.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, may I congratulate the Grimsby Seafood Village for doing so successfully under the current circumstances, and my honourable friend for being a promoter of them. The government is taking unprecedented action to support jobs and livelihoods across the UK, with over £200 billion of taxpayers' money being spent, including £11 billion in business grants and £10 billion in business rate-making. The summer economic update contained £33 billion of support, a jobs retention bonus and EAT to help out, and the Chancellor will be here momentarily, and I'm sure the Cleethorpes champion will be asking for Cleethorpes to get its fair share.
Jim Sharp. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, on August the 13th, 2020, some 60 parliamentarians from 28 countries around the world sent a letter to the Vietnamese president calling for the immediate unconditional release of imprisoned Vietnamese human rights activist Nguyen Van Truyen.
אתם אוהבים את המנגינה של המוזיקת מעליות? אני אוהב אותה, אבל... ביי.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Gentleman is perhaps the House's most tireless campaigner for the freedom of religion and protection for religious minorities against persecution, and he has a great deal of support for what he does. The UK is committed to defending freedom of religion or belief for all and promoting respect between different religious and non-religious communities. Promoting the right to freedom of religion or belief is one of the UK's human rights policy priorities, as it should be. The UK remains deeply concerned about the severity
דווקא לפי אחוזים הדקס דווקא ירוק קצת, למרות הירידות. כאילו היום הוא ירוק. מוזיקת מעליות אחרת. הבעיה שרוב המוזיקה של המעליות זה קופירייט וזה לא קופירייט.
A number of members across the House have been campaigning all their political lives to get this country free from the shackles of the European Union. And therefore it's exceptionally good news that the European Union has recently changed their position on a comprehensive free trade agreement, and Mr. Barnier is coming to London this afternoon to try and finalize.
יורו בדרך ל-1.17 חזרה כנראה. בוא נראה את הגרף. רק דיברתי, זה עשה בדקה 7 פיפס. בוא נראה אבל הגרף. לפי הגרף הזה נראה שהוא נבלם. בדיוק על 50% של פיבונאצ'י. מה שמתחתי עכשיו זה פיבונאצ'י, שזה אמור למדוד עד איפה יגיע תיקון אם יגיע תיקון. וכפי שאתם רואים, הוא נעצר על 50%. בדיוק על 50%. אבל בדיוק. הנה, הסתכלו. פיבונאצ'י גילה את הדבר הזה, לא זוכר לפני כמה שנים הוא חי, אבל הרבה. ליאונרדו מפיזה, בוא נבדוק. מתי פיבונאצ'י? $1,170. 1,250. הוא נפטר ב-1,250. וואו, הגיע לגיל 80. שיעה? קיצר, הוא גילה את הנוסחה המיוחדת הזאת של פיבונאצ'י, וכפי שאתם רואים בגרף שעה זה מה שקרה. רואים? נבלם בדיוק. אבל זה לא מדויק. As I said earlier, high streets are essential to our towns and our sense of community, and it is really important to use the Towns Fund, £3.6 billion Towns Fund, well. But my honourable friend is such a fantastic champion for his own area, and this is important because we want people to visit our great and historic towns and cities and spend money there and keep the economies going and thriving.
It relates to this business question. I'm very grateful.
מי זה עכשיו?
tone of culture, but I would say leader has heard what's been said. I don't want to continue the debate about it, which as an expert like yourself knows I shouldn't be doing either. But I don't know whether you'll make it a
איך אני מסדר בלייב שזה לא יחזור אחורה בסטרים סטינג. זה אולי דקה אני אבדוק. כן, זה לעשות דיסייבל ל-DVR הזה. איך קוראים לו ל-DVR? כן, דיסייבל ל-DVR ואז אי אפשר להחזיר אחורה. לא, הם שמו פה את השעון. הנה עכשיו שר האוצר הבריטי מדבר.
We're providing billions of pounds of support for local authorities, a grant scheme for affected businesses worth up to £500 million every month, and of course we expanded the job support scheme, with the government covering the cost of paying 2/3 of people's normal wages if their employer had been legally required to close. And for areas in local alert level 3, we have made available over £1 billion.
תסתכלו היורו, הוא נעצר פה, לדעתי הוא ייתן תיקון. אם אני מאמין שהוא ירד, אז אני הייתי מחכה לו. אתם רואים? פיבונאצ'י הפוך. יעני אני אומר שהוא יגיע בין שליש, 1.1823 ל-1.1845. ושם אני אוכל לחבור לשורט, אם אני מאמין שזה באמת שורט. אבל אתם מבינים, זה כרגע במגמת עלייה. יעני, אם זה עכשיו יעלה פה, ויפרוץ עכשיו למעלה כאן, זה ימשיך לעלות עוד. מקווה שהבנתם מה אני אומר, כי נראה לי שיש סיכוי שלא הבנתם. אבל בגרף יומי לפחות, כרגע יש היפוך לירידות. אתם רואים? כל פעם שזה מגיע לכאן זה יורד. אז כנראה יותר סביר שזה ייצר באזור 18, 20, 30, ואז זה ירד למטה יותר חזק. או יחזור ל-1.17 באמת. פאונד דולר מעניין, כי הפאונד דולר עוד מעט יהיה במצב שיש שווה לקנות אותו. הוא חוזר למטה. אגב, יש סדרה אחת מאוד מעניינת שקוראים לה ביליונס. דקה אני אראה לכם את הסדרה הזאת עוד מעט. אני בינתיים אראה לכם את הגרף. בינתיים שאני אעבור.
But I'm providing enough funding to give every business premises in the hospitality, leisure and accommodation sectors a direct grant worth up to £2,100 for every month Tier 2 restrictions apply. And that's equivalent to 70% of the value of the grants available for closed businesses in Tier 3. And crucially, I am pleased to confirm these
הבעיה היא שהם הפסיקו את עונה 5 בפרק 7 בביליונס בגלל הקורונה. זה פסה, והם עכשיו כבר מדברים על עונה 6. מה לעזאזל? מתי פרק 8 יוצא? זה אמור להיות משוחרר ב-2020, אבל זה לא. דקה אני אראה לכם את הכותרת וגם איזה דירוג קיבלה הסדרה הזאת. הנה רואים? ביליונס. מכאן התמונה שלי.
If businesses are legally required to close, as we've already outlined, the government will cover the full
הנה יש פה גם short squeeze, the good life, the deal. אחלה סדרה. נראה לנו הולך לראות את זה שוב. אחרי שנסיים לראות סדרה אחרת. זה קיבל דירוג ממש טוב אבל ביליונס. אין ספק. תסתכלו איזה דירוג זה קיבל, 8.4 מתוך 10. בוא נראה. כסף טאור עולה.
First, under the original scheme, employees had to work for 33% of their normal hours. Now, we will ask them to work only 20% of those hours.
20%.
The employer contribution for the hours not worked will not be 33% as originally planned, or even 20% as it is in the October furlough scheme. It will reduce to 5%. And the scheme will apply to eligible businesses in all of the alert levels. So businesses that are not closed but face higher
לזכור שב100 סאבים יהיה לי שרת דיסקורד שאני אפרסם לכולם. רגע, יש לכם שאלה אולי על מטבעות? מאוד נמצא כאן.
We have made this one of the most generous versions of a short-time work scheme anywhere in the world. It is better for businesses, better for jobs, and better for the economy.
כאילו אף אחד לא בצ'אט, פשוט.
As we increase the contribution we're making towards employees' wages,
יש לכם אבל שאלות?
to the incomes of the self-employed as well.
הייתי מראה את המים של וואן פיס, אבל לא נראה לי שהם יאהבו את זה. אם חסמו לי רק מלראות את הקטע הזה, כנראה שלא.
So far through this crisis, we have now provided over 13 billion pounds of support to self-employed workers. Sole traders, small businesses, and self-employed people are the dynamic entrepreneurial heart of our economy, and this government is on their side. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, a wage subsidy.
חבר שלי ההולנדי שלח לי תגובה? לא. כן, אבל זה בעברית הערוץ. הוא אמריקאי. לא אמריקאי, הולנדי. משהו אחר? משהו יותר מצחיק עם בוריס? נחפש אחד? יש אחד מ-21 באוקטובר?
Or any other measure taken to improve the finances of TfL are entirely the responsibility of the bankrupt current Labour Mayor of London.
Butler! Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people of the length and breadth of the country have made many sacrifices over the last few months to try to suppress COVID-19.
זה מצחיק לראות אותה פשוט.
Buckinghamshire may soon find itself in Tier 2. Can my right honourable friend tell the people of my Aylesbury constituency how long we'll be expected to stay there, what additional help there'd be for local businesses, and crucially, what the route out would be?
אתם מבינים מה הולך כאן?
Thank you. Well, I hope reassure my honourable friend by telling him that the incidence in the Vale of Aylesbury is in fact less than half the England average, and the way forward for the constituents of the Vale of Aylesbury and everywhere else is for everyone to keep following the guidance, observing the new restrictions, but obviously washing hands, wearing a face covering in enclosed spaces and keeping...
אגב, באנגליה הם צריכים לשטוף ידיים רק 20 שניות, לא 30 שניות. פה בארץ אני זוכר שהם אמרו שצריך 30 שניות. אני הולך לפי אנגליה. באנגליה אמרו שצריך רק 20 שניות לשטוף.
Prime Minister, how does an area which goes into Tier 3 restrictions get out of those restrictions?
זה קיר סתם שאל אותו שאלה. הספיקר זה יושב ראש הפרלמנט שם, זה שעושה את האורדר, יעני הצדק וכל זה. השופט. שאמור להשליט סדר, אבל כפי שאתם רואים בפרלמנט הבריטי, הם לא נכנסים לדברים של אחד השני. בישראל הם בטח היו כבר נכנסים מזמן לדברים של אחד השני.
If the infection rate R in a tier 3 area has not come below 1, will it be possible in any circumstances for that area to come out of tier 3 if the R hasn't come below 1?
Mr. Speaker, obviously the R is one of the measures that we look at, and we'll take a decision based on a number of things, including the R, but also, of course, rates of infection.
רק דיברתי היורו פתאום עולה, הסתכלו מה היורו עושה.
And other data, but the most important thing is for areas that do go into tier 3, and I'm very grateful to local leadership in the areas that have gone into tier 3, because it's the right thing for them to do, the right thing for their constituents, the right thing to save lives. When they are able to make progress, and of course they will come out of tier 3. And as he knows full well, the measures that are put in place are reviewed every 28 days.
Mr. Speaker, I'm now confused by the Prime Minister's answer. If it's not the R rate under
לראות את היורו דולר עושה את גרף דקה זה כמו לראות את מסי עושה גול. לדעתי לפחות. זה רק אני, אבל כן. מבחינתי זה מסי. דקה כזאת זה כמו מסי. זה היה נחמד שעשיתי ככה ו...
On the same day, the Prime Minister himself said there was only a chance of getting infection rates down. This goes to the heart of the issue in Greater Manchester and elsewhere. Because the widespread fear, Prime Minister, is that tier 3 is the worst of all worlds. It brings significant economic harm without getting the virus sufficiently under control to exit tier 3. So instead of being a solution...
מעל הרצועה העליונה של הבוינדר, זה אומר שהוא הולך לכיוון למעלה בגרף רבע שעה. אני דווקא הייתי מעדיף לקחת השעות ביורו דולר ב-1.19 אם הוא ייתן בטעות. אם הוא ייתן איזה... תמיד הוא נותן הזדמנות להיכנס. תמיד אנשים חושבים שהם מפספסים את העסקה ביורו או במטח, ואז אחרי זה מתבאסים ופותחים את זה בשער די מאפן, ותמיד הוא נותן עוד הזדמנות להיכנס. כמעט 95% מהמקרים תמיד הוא נותן עוד הזדמנות להיכנס.
Restrictions in place are also showing signs of progress. We are pursuing, Mr. Speaker, a local, a regional approach, which is the sensible approach for this country. That's what the epidemiology supports. It's what the deputy...
למי שפה יש לו אבל שאלה כלשהי שקשורה למסחר, מניות, משהו? צריך למצוא מישהו לעשות איתו דיבייט בבוקר כשהוא איתי בשיחה ולדבר ביחד. תוך כדי להסתכל על הגרפים, נראה לי זה יותר מעניין. בעיה שלא הרבה אנשים מראים בשעה הזו.
Back into a damaging lockdown for weeks on end, and he has no clue about how he would propose to get the country out of that, does he?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate it's going to be a review every 28 days, but if the R rate hasn't come below 1, then the infection rate is still going up, and the numbers are going up, and the admissions are going up, and the numbers in hospital are going up, and the deaths are going up. Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that he would take a tier 3 area out of tier 3 with the R above 1? I don't think so. Let me spell out what this means. Let me spell out what this means. On Friday, thousands of people in Greater Manchester, taxi drivers, pub and hospitality,
יש לכם שאלות אבל? נו, על מסחר? הגיע עכשיו עוד אחד חדש לצפות. הגיע והלך. משהו, יש לכם עוד איזה...
Their food and their heating bills won't be lower, and that could last for months. Why can't the Prime Minister and the Chancellor understand this? Stop bargaining with people's lives. Stop dividing communities and provide the support that's needed in Manchester.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud that this government has already given Greater Manchester £1.1 billion in support for business, £200 million in extra unring-fenced funding, £50 million to tackle infections in care homes, £20 million for tests and trace, another £22 million for local response that we announced yesterday. And yesterday, the Mayor of Greater Manchester was offered a further £60 million, which he turned down, Mr. Speaker, with no encouragement, I may say, to support from the right honourable gentleman. So I can tell the House today, Mr Speaker, is that that cash will be distributed to the boroughs of Greater Manchester. And I want to thank my honourable and right honourable colleagues across the House for Haywood and Middleton, from Bolton North West, from Bolton North East, from Bury South, Bury North, Horsham and Sale West, and Hazel Grove for the support that they have given in this matter, Mr Speaker.
This is a Prime Minister who can pay £7,000 a day for consultants on track and trace, which isn't working, that can find £43 million for a garden bridge that was never built, but he can't find £5 million for the people of Greater Manchester. I really think
5 מיליון פאונד לא כזה הרבה כסף, עם כל הכבוד. תחשוב שאתה צריך להרק את זה לאוכלוסייה שיש שם מיליון אנשים, שאפילו לא 5 פאונד לבן אדם אחד. לא מבין מה הוא מנסה לומר.
To pit region against region, mayor against mayor, council against council, ask them to trade away their businesses and jobs. We need a one-nation approach. Replace these endless local battles with clear national criteria and proper support for jobs. Labour's motion this afternoon would do that. Why won't the Prime Minister support it?
Mr Speaker,
תראו, היו כבר לאחד שנה 18.
the one nation conservative support that we've given to the entire country. £200 billion in support for jobs and livelihoods across the whole of the country already. A further £9.9 billion now for the job support scheme. It is this government that has cut VAT for business, deferred business rates. There is no other country in Europe, Mr Speaker, where so much support, so much help has been given to the population to get through this crisis, and we will continue to do that. But I think it is the height of absurdity, Mr Speaker, that he stands up and attacks the economic consequences of the measures that we're obliged to take across some parts of the country when he wants to turn the lights out with a full national lockdown, taking kids... that was his policy last week anyway, wasn't it? Perhaps he could confirm that's still his policy. Is that what he wants to do?
Here's Starmer. Mr Speaker, on his press conference yesterday, the Prime Minister produced heat maps across the country showing the infection rate up in all ages across all regions, and particularly showing regions that have been in the equivalent of Tier 2 restrictions for weeks, if not months, moving into Tier 3. Now, if they're moving into Tier 3, Tier 2 hasn't worked. Because if Tier 2 worked, they should be going to Tier 1. So Tier 2 goes to Tier 3, Tier 3 has no end, because there's no prospect or confidence in the R rate coming below 1. And I do not believe that a Tier 3 region will come out of those restrictions unless R is below 1 and whilst numbers are still going up. So we now have a stark choice. And by the way, Prime Minister, Cornwall is the only place, possibly with the Isle of Wight, where the infection rate today is less than Greater Manchester when it went into local restrictions. So this idea that some areas are immune is wrong. So there's a stark choice. Carry on with the Prime Minister's approach, which will lead to weeks and weeks and months of prolonged agony in all your constituencies for millions of people in Tier 2 and 3 with no exit, or put in place a 2 to 3 week time-limited circuit break to break the cycle and bring the virus back under control. Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland in part have chosen that path. With half-term starting this Friday, this may be the last opportunity for the Prime Minister to put in place an effective circuit break. The Prime Minister was too slow in the first phase of this pandemic. He's being too slow again. We cannot repeat this mistake. Will he act in the public interest and take the opportunity to put in place a circuit break this Friday?
Mr Speaker, we will do whatever it takes to get this country through the crisis, with or without the support of the right honourable gentleman opposite. And I may say that I think that his policy, I've explained why I don't believe that his policy is the right one for the country, because it would involve closing schools, it would involve shuttering businesses, with all the psychological, the emotional damage that lockdown brings. He can't say how many circuit breakers.
כן, עליו הזה לא ילדים בגיל 6.
He can't say how long they would go on. He can't say how much damage they would do.
אף ילד בן 6 לא יבין גם מה הוא אומר, בוריס ג'ונסון. אם נהיה כנים.
sensical approach, which is a local and a regional approach, keeping kids in school, keeping our economy moving, because that is the way to get the whole of our country through this crisis together, so that we all, and particularly those regions that are now, alas, under Tier 3 restrictions, all the regions of the country bounce back strongly together, Mr. Speaker.
Let's head up to Cheshire with Edward Timpson. Edward Timpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. After recent positive progress, COVID has disproportionately and adversely affected participation levels in female sport and physical activity. So to help reverse this, will my right honourable friend lend his support to the development of the first ever Women's and Girls Football National Centre of Excellence in Winsford in my constituency, a £70 million project that he has previously expressed his enthusiasm for and help build female grassroots sport back better.
בעקרון היא אמורה להיות גם בנטפליקס, אבל נראה שצריך VPN כדי לראות את זה בנטפליקס. בסדר.
Cheshire FA's commitment to providing a new world-class facility for women and girls football, and I look forward to the proposed opening of the centre in Winsford.
We're now heading to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford, audio.
הנה עכשיו איאן בלקפורד הוא פה, שהוא עוד פעם בזום. לא, הם לא הצליחו אפילו להביא את התמונה שלו, שהם שמו רק את, כאילו, את הלייב שלו, שהם שמו רק תמונה שלו ולא את הוידאו. כאילו בטלפון, איזה עצוב.
Behind closed doors, the Prime Minister's complaining that he can't get by on his £150,000 salary. So can I ask the Prime Minister, if he's finding life such a struggle, how on earth does he expect many workers to get by on just £5.84 an hour when the Tory cuts and furlough sink in?
Mr. Speaker, actually I'm proud of what we've done to support people on low incomes throughout this period, and indeed before. It was this government that
הם תומכים באנשים שיש להם משכורות נמוכות.
We've just increased universal credit by about £1,000 a year, and he makes the point about furlough, Mr. Speaker, and as he knows, combine the universal credit with job support, the job support scheme.
וואי, הוא לא כבר 1.1825. ואתם זוכרים מה אמרתי קודם, שאם הוא יגיע לאזור 1.1830-40 זה יהיה מקום טוב לקנות. דקה, אני בעצמי כבר לא זוכר. עד איפה אמרתי שאני... כן. בין 30-40 זה יהיה מקום טוב לעשות שורט. לפי גרף הבא שעות טוב, אז נראה זה הולך לעלות עוד. ולכן אולי 1.19 גם יגיע ביורו. תסתכלו, 20 פיפס ברבע שעה. וכל פיפס זה מאית הסנט. לא יודע אם זה אומר משהו. בוא נגיד שנניח על $30,000, כל פיפס זה $3.
Mr. Speaker, I really must reject what the right honourable gentleman has just said, because it bears no relation to the facts or the reality of what this government is doing to support people across the country. And it's not just the £200 billion investment in jobs and livelihoods. What we also are engaged in, and what we will continue to deliver, is a colossal investment in education, in health, in housing, in infrastructure that will deliver jobs and growth throughout this United Kingdom for a generation, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I congratulate the Prime Minister and negotiating team for their strong stance in negotiations with the EU.
מדברים עכשיו על הדיל של האירופאים והבריטים, שהיא כאילו שמחה שהוא עושה משא ומתן איתם, עם האיחוד האירופי, כדי למצוא דיל נורמלי, כי כרגע אין להם דיל. כרגע בגלל שאין להם באמת דיל, אז המכסים יהיו 100%, חלק מהדברים שיצאו מאנגליה. חלק מהדברים שיצאו מאנגליה יהיו 100% מכס, בגלל שאין להם דיל כרגע.
By the UK internal market bill, which is going through another place at the moment, and also, of course, protecting the Good Friday Agreement.
Ed David.
Mr. Speaker, my key
is severely disabled. He turned 18 last month, so he's one of the first to see his child's trust fund mature. But Mikey's disabilities mean he can't manage his own finances, so he can't access these savings. Government rules on child trust fund means parents can't either, without paying expensive legal fees. This is Mikey's own money. He wants to use it to buy a specially adapted tricycle. So will the Prime Minister...
אגב, עשיתי שעה שלמה של שביל על הדר קשוח. על לקנות קורסים, לקנות חוזים דיגיטליים ולא קורסים. למה לקנות חוזים ולא קורסים דיגיטליים? מפרסם אותו במוצאי שבת נראה לי. אני לא שומר שבת, אבל...
Heading up to Harrow for Bob Blackman to land this question. Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Ground Control. My right honourable friend will be well aware of the negotiations going on between the Department for Transport and the current Mayor of London on a further bailout for Transport for London. The current Mayor is demanding an eye-watering £5.65 billion to keep TfL running for the next 18 months, yet he refuses to accept any economies because of offending his union paymasters. Can my right honourable friend confirm, however, that the government has not required the current Mayor of London to expand the congestion charge to the North and South Circular roads?
Mr. Speaker, well, I can certainly confirm, as I said in my answer to the first question, is that the black hole in TfL's finances, the bankruptcy of TfL, which was led, by the way, plus financial health.
אבל היא הכי מגניבה מוזיקת מעליות.
It certainly was, is entirely the fault of the current Labour Mayor of London with his
אגב, יש לי מגינה אחרת, אולי מגינה יותר טובה?
which were never pursued by the previous Mayor of London, I may say.
כאילו מגינה במחשב.
שנייה, אני... my honourable friend will make that clear.
Dr. Rupert.
Mr. Speaker, financial support packages, tackling homelessness, rail...
For regulatory clearances at NHS improvement are dramatically shortened. Will the Prime Minister cut NHS red tape
so local people can have the improvements we need at our local hospital as quickly as possible.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, and I hope I can reassure him by saying that clinical modelling work is now complete and the site development...
רגע, אותי שומעים סבבה, נכון? שלא ישמעו את בוריס ג'ונסון יותר ממה שומעים אותי.
On the 16th of June, the Prime Minister agreed to provide free school meal vouchers to hungry children over the summer holidays, after claiming that just 24 hours beforehand, he was completely unaware of the campaign that was calling for it. Last week, Liberal Democrat Education Minister for Wales, Kirsty Williams, guaranteed that free school meal provision during school holidays would continue until at least Easter 2021, and yesterday the Scottish Government committed to do the same. So, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that he is indeed aware of these announcements?
וואו, זה אף גם ב-1908.
Well, Mr. Speaker, governments of all stripes have supplied free school meals since 1906, and I'm proud that it was this Conservative government that extended universal free school meals to 5, 6 and 7-year-olds. The party opposite were in power for 30 of the last 100 years and never did anything like that, Mr. Speaker. We support kids of low incomes in school, and we will continue to do so. But the most important thing is to keep them in school and not to go to tear off into another national lockdown, taking them
כן, הוא גם לא רוצה לוקדאון, בוריס ג'ונסון.
To use the benefit system and all the systems of income support to support young people, to support...
כרגע הם הולכים ומחמירים ככל שיש יותר נדבקים, וברגע שיורד אז הם כאילו מקלים.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One lesson we've all learned in the past 9 months...
תראו איזה בומר, הוא מתקרב למצלמה כאילו... תראו איך הוא מתקרב למצלמה כמו איזה בומר. חושבים שאם הוא מתקרב למצלמה ישמעו אותו יותר גבוה.
We will deliver on our manifesto commitment to roll out full fibre superfast broadband across the United Kingdom and ensure that we are global leaders in digital connectivity. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I thank my right honourable friend, for everything he does to lobby for that, and I can tell him that our local delivery partner in Devon and Somerset has provided connectivity of the kind he describes to 300,000 premises over the last across those two counties, and indeed we are going to be a world leader in connectivity, Mr. Speaker, as we build back better.
To South London with Janet Davey. Janet Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Prime Minister confirm that his government is seeking to force the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, to remove free travel for under 18s and for holders of the 60-plus travel card in return for further financial support for TfL to keep the tubes and buses running? How can this be right when many people in London, and indeed in my constituency, already have months of genuine hardship ahead of them?
Mr. Speaker, it was the Labour Mayor of London who bankrupted TfL's finances, and any changes that he brings in are entirely his responsibility. And I suggest she holds him to account.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the Prime Minister is committed to doubling down on levelling up. Will he join me for a virtual tour of Stoke-on-Trent Central and a round table with key partners focused on delivery for the left behind, not least to ensure that the Transforming Cities Fund investment will revolutionise public transport in the city?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's an easy commitment for me to make, and I'm delighted to do so. And I can tell her that we're investing nearly £20 million through our city deal in pioneering a new programme of sustainable low-carbon and low-cost heat.
תראו, 30 פיפס בשעה. זה בערך $90 על עסקה של $30,000 בשעה. כאילו זה לא נשמע הרבה, אבל כשאתה עם מינוף זה כן הרבה. כי אתה יכול לסחור בסכום מספיק גדול שזה יהיה אחוז מהכסף. ובבנק מציעים לך אחוז מהכסף בשנה, ופה אתה יכול לעשות את זה ביום. אבל הסיכונים גבוהים יותר. כאילו זה אכזרי שאתה יכול לעשות 1% ביום במטח, ובבנק נותנים לך 1% בשנה. תחשוב כמה כסף עושים בבנק, כי גם הבנקים עושים עסקאות מטח. תחשוב כמה מרוויחים רק מהעסקאות מטח בבנק. וזה לא כל את העמלה שיש להם. ככה הבנקים משלמים את הבונוסים לעובדים שלהם, עם כל ההמרות מטח האלה. אתה יודע, אם עכשיו הם עושים 1% על כל הכסף שיש להם בבנק,
and I hope she agrees with me that it would make no
זה הרבה.
sense at all for businesses
אחוז על כל הכסף שיש להם בבנק. מספיק כדי לשלם את כל המשכורות והבונוסים.
in a series of multiple lockdowns of the kind that are recommended by the party opposite.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The people of Aberconwy and North Wales are learning to live with COVID-19. We're frustrated by national Welsh Government policy that seeks to place restrictions on us that are the same in the village of Cwmpen Machno as they are in the capital, Cardiff. Last week,
רגע, מישהו חייב אבל בצ'אט כי אני מרגיש שאף אחד לא מדבר, או שאין מה להגיד. לא יודע. אם מישהו חי בצ'אט שיכתוב משהו, בבקשה.
Well, I think my honourable friend really puts the distinction very, very clearly and sharply, and it's the commonsensical, balanced approach that we're following. I do think that where local leaders step up to the plate, I'm delighted that South Yorkshire came on board this morning. I had a great conversation with Dan Jarvis.
איפה נפתח שורט על יורו? פה? פה? או פה?
To Knowsley with Sir George and Sir George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I return to the subject of free school meals?
ב-1.90 לעשות שורט? לא יודע אם הוא יגיע לשם. 1.50 לעשות שורט. שאלה קשה. רגע, יש פה אבל עוד מישהו בצ'אט, כי אני מרגיש שיש פה 4 אנשים ואין אף אחד שמדבר חוץ ממך. מעניין. מאוד. צריך לעשות בשעה אחרת לייב. אם אני אעשה לייב שמסביר על הווירוס שהיה לאינדה גיים ביוטיוב, כמה זה יהיה? טוב. כאילו כמה אנשים יאהבו את זה וירצו לצפות. כי אני יודע שבגרפים אנשים אין להם מושג מה יש בגרף. אין להם מושג מה הם רואים. אני מבין את זה. לפחות בהימורים אנשים הבינו מה הם רואים, אבל בהימורים זה חרא כי לא באמת מרוויח בהימורים. בסופו של דבר אתה מפסיד הכל בהימורים.
My honourable friend puts his finger on it, and that's exactly what we to do. And I can tell him that just the areas that go into high levels of concern are reviewed every 14 days, and the restrictions, as I told the right honourable gentleman, are reviewed every 28 days. The way to get through it is exactly as he says, to follow the guidance, particularly the hand space basics.
איפה פרנק? שוויצרי מול היין. אגב, תראו איפה הלייטקוין והביטקוין. לייטקוין על $55 כבר. הביטקוין על 12,800, הוא גם הגיע ל-13,200.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that Hammersmith Bridge has been closed entirely thanks to the incompetence of the current Labour Mayor of London, and that Sean Bailey, the Conservative candidate, is going to reopen.
טוב, רגע, רציתי את הפרנק שבאפשר לבדוק.
That is the best thing possible.
כן, פרנק מול היין.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my right honourable friend leads the country through Brexit and delivers global Britain,
גרף יומי.
will he ensure that the first consideration he gives to the values and policies of his government are those that which will unite and bring our country together and make all those who voted remain for what they thought were the
כרגע נראה שהפרנק שוויצרי בדרך למעלה.
proud again of their country for bringing those values to global Britain?
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we're going to use the G7 presidency, the COP26 summit, to champion our values across the world, and in particular the one that he mentions, female education, which I think is the single policy that can really transform the outcomes across the planet. And our global objective is to help 40 million girls across the world to get a decent education.
Mr. Speaker, his government lost control of the virus, making extra restrictions inevitable. But with no certainty, no communication and no new financial support, he's killing Nottingham businesses. Castle Rock Brewery is a Nottingham success
טוב, נעשה את הלייב עד סביבות 11 וקצת, כאילו עוד 5 דקות כזה, ונחשוב שבוע הבא איזה לייב אני עושה. אולי אני אעשה לייב בשעה יותר נורמלית, ועל כאילו על הווירוס של אינדגיים שהיה לו. נראה לי דווקא אנשים יאהבו את התוכן על הווירוס, וגם על זה שהוא ריץ מניות, הווירוס.
Of course, sympathize deeply with businesses that face difficulties because of the pandemic. Though I would remind her that in her constituency, the infection rate is now running at 815 per 100,000, and we must get that down. And I thank the people.
הלייבים של הגרפים גם נחמד, אבל רוב האנשים לא מבינים בזה, אז הם כאילו רואים גרף, ואין להם מושג מה הם רואים.
Mr. Speaker, following the introduction of Tier 2 restrictions in Europe, can the Prime Minister be more open in communicating evidence base for Europe going into Tier 2, outline a roadmap for the city's return to Tier 1, and urgently consider creation of specific support for the hospitality industry suffering losses from the limbo that Tier 2 is creating?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Well, I can tell my honourable friend that the infection rate in York, alas, is now running at 279 per 100,000, and we must get it down. But we can get it down. We can get it down through the package of measures that we've described. And you can see in areas where people are complying with the guidance that it is having an effect. And you can see that it's having an effect, Mr. Speaker, because the R, if it weren't for the efforts and the energies of the British people, the R would be running at 3 or more. It's now between 1.2 and 1.5. It won't take much, Mr. Speaker, it won't take much, the compliance in those areas that are hit at the moment, to get that R back down below 1. That's what we're aiming for, and that is the way to get businesses across the country, in the Right Honourable Lady's constituency in Nottingham, in his constituency, back on their feet as fast as possible. It would not be sensible, in my view, to plunge them all back into a sustained series of national lockdowns, particularly in areas where the virus is low.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor has decided that people who are unable to work because of coronavirus restrictions should be paid as little as 2/3 of the national minimum wage. At the same time, the government is paying £7,000 a day for consultants to work on failed Serco track and trace programmes. Can the Prime Minister tell this House how on earth he thinks that is justifiable? And is this what he means by levelling up?
No.
Mr. Speaker, the NHS track and trace is now testing more people than any other country in Europe. It's tested, I think, 26 million people so far. We've conducted 26 million tests, and I'm also proud on her other point that we've been able to support across the country in the way that we have. She's not correct in what she says about the combined impact of the job support scheme and universal credit, because that lifts, they work in tandem, and that
טוב, יאללה, אז השעה 11 הגיעה, כאילו 11 2 דקות, עוד רגע נסיים, רק נגיד שלום לכל מי שהגיע, תודה רבה לכל מי שהיה פה. באמת תודה. כל מי שיכל להגיע. הלייב הבא אולי הוא יהיה באמצע שבוע, לא יודע עדיין מתי. אני אחשוב ואחזיר תשובה יותר מאוחר. אני אעשה תזמון ללייב. אז יאללה, ביי.